Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis and we'll be learning today Mirat Hashem Daf Nun Beis Amid Beis. So we're continuing to learn Hilchos Netillas Yadayim, and today we begin a new Siman. We begin Siman Kuf Samach on Nun Beis Amid Beis. Ezoi Mayim Kisherim, which types of water are kosher to be used for Netillas Yadayim? Ve'ezoi Pesulim Lenetila, and what water is considered puzzle. It may not be used for the netillas yadayim. Ubay tesvav seifim, and here we have 15 seifim. I find that this is a halacha that gets a little bit overlooked, even though you would think, what's the big deal already? I mean, everybody washes the netillas yadayim. Generally speaking, you're going over to the sink, you're using a keli, you're filling it up, and you're washing your hands. How negeya is it to know what water can be used for netillas yadayim, what water cannot be used for netillas yadayim? But I suspect that we're going to find some surprises as we travel through Kuf Samach and realize that sometimes things are done with water that do not allow us to then use that water for netillas yadayim, and it's a halacha that may become overlooked. So let's take a look here. It says the Bechara Sif Aleph. First of all, Mayim shenishtanu mar'ehen, water where the appearance of the water has changed. Bein machmas atzman, whether the appearance of the water changed on its own, meaning there's no external catalyst that is changing the appearance of the water. The water changed appearance on its own, without any kind of real outside stimulus. So bein machmas atzman, whether the appearance of the water changed on its own. Bein machmas davar shenafal l'soichan, or if the appearance of the water changed by virtue of something falling into the water. Bein machmas mekaimam, or if the appearance of the water changed by virtue of where the water has been placed, where the water is located. In all of these cases, says the Mechaber, psulim, that water becomes puzzle for use for netillas yadayim. Okay, so we spoke here about water where the appearance of the water that has changed, and the Mechaber gave us over here 3 different reasons why the appearance may have changed. One is machmas atzman, on its own. The water changed appearance on its own without an external catalyst causing the appearance of the water to change. That was one. Bein machmas davar shenafal l'soichan. Number 2, something fell into the water, and because of what fell into the water, the appearance of the water changes. Number 3 was machmas mekaimam. Because of where the water is located, the appearance of the water has changed. The Mechaber says that in all 3 of these cases, the water is going to be puzzle for use for netillas yadayim. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is Katan Aleph. We're talking about water shenishtanu mar'ehen, water whose appearance has changed. So first of all, where does this halacha come from? Why is it that if water changes its appearance, it's no longer usable for the netillas yadayim? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Yalfinan zemi mayim shel kiyar. We learn this out from the halacha of the waters of the kiyar, shahaya lekidush yadayim b'migdash, which was used to wash and prepare to be mekadesh the hands and the feet of the kaihanim in the Beis HaMikdash before they entered the Beis HaMikdash to do the avodah. So before a kain was nichnas to do the avodah, he had to have kiddush yadayim v'raglayim from the kiyar. The psulin b'shinoi mare, the water of the kiyar, if it changed its appearance, it was possible for kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. And he brings this down from the Beis Yosef in the name of the Ra'ah in Masechtas Brachos. Now, where does this halacha come from, that the water of the kiyar becomes possible for kiddush yadayim v'raglayim if its appearance changes? So that we actually learn out from a pasuk. We have, the pasuk uses the word bamayim, in water, twice, by the water of the kiyar. It says v'nasata shama moyim, and it says v'rachatzu bamayim. So it says that you have to put water in the kiyar, and the kaihanim have to wash their hands in the water of the kiyar. So the Gemara Darshans, it says the word mayim twice. Why twice? So one is extra to teach us that it has to be mayim. It has to be clear water. The appearance of the water can change. Now, since the water of the kiyar was used for kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, and by netillas yadayim, we're sort of doing the same type of thing. We're washing our hands to be matayar our hands in preparation of sitting down and eating a sudas kva alapas. So we learn out from the kiyar that if the water changes its appearance, it's possible for use. Okay, ice cotton base. The first case that the Mechaber discussed was water whose appearance changed machmas atzman, on its own. What does that mean? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Kigoin sha'amad b'kliz man rav. Let's say you had water sitting in a keli for a long time. So you had a glass of water sitting around for a long time. Ad shenase yaroik, until the water starts getting a greenish tinge. Now, why did the water get a greenish tinge? Nothing was added to the water. Nothing got mixed into the water. Nothing went into the water to cause the water to change its appearance. The water remained exactly the way the water always was. Maybe the keli is even a closed keli. But so the water has not been changed. Nothing's been added to the water, yet the water changed color. Now the Mishnah Berurah says, why did the water turn green? Al yadei ha'avir hacham, because of the warm air. The environment in the room where the standing water is sitting over there, it caused the water to start turning green. Maybe this is algae, maybe this is some other type of microbial growth, maybe it's a mold or a mildew that's growing in the water, but nothing was added to the water. The water changed on its own with the passage of time. So the Mechaber says that since the water has changed appearance, even though it was machmas atzman, that water becomes possible for the netillas yadayim. Now the Mishnah Berurah says an interesting thing. V'hinei, ha-Mechaber hetik zeh miloshan HaTorah. The Mechaber gets this from the Torah. This is what the Torah says. Aval b'Rambam. However, if you look in the Rambam, says the Mishnah Berurah, lo nizkar livsoil. The Rambam does not mention a psul of the water changing appearance when it changes machmas atzman, ela b'nishtana machmas davar acher. If you look at the Rambam, from the Rambam it would seem that water only becomes possible for the netillas yadayim if it changes its appearance machmas davar acher, because something else came into the water and caused the water to change its appearance. And he brings down over here from the Taz, the Magen Avram, the Gra, and others. So the Achrayim prove the Hiskimu Ladina, and they reach a consensus that this is the halacha. The mutter b'nishtanu machmas atzman says, even though the Mechaber says this way, and he's bringing it from the Torah, but from the Achrayim it comes out that there is no psul of the water of the netillas yadayim if it changes its appearance machmas atzman. Now there's a lot of raid about this, because the truth is that even the case that the Chavetz Chaim himself says, he says you have water that was standing in a keli for a long time, and its appearance changed because of environmental issues, because it was very warm in the room. Or let's say it's an algae. Let's say the water was sitting exposed to the sunlight, and over time it started to grow algae. It turned greenish. That really is machmas davar acher. It's not that the water just somehow decided to change its molecular structure, or suddenly the water changed. No, the sunlight or the temperature caused the water to change. So some want to suggest that that's also considered machmas davar acher, and that the Rambam wouldn't disagree with this. The Rambam would say that that's called machmas davar acher. But this is Mishnah Berurah here, and Mishnah Berurah says over here that the only time we find a psul in a change of appearance is if it's machmas davar acher. Now, what does machmas davar acher mean? So, Mishnah Berurah is cut in gimel. Machmas davar shenofal. Let's say it changed appearance because something fell into the water. Says the Mishnah Berurah, kion dioi. Let's say ink fell into the water. So if ink falls into the water, it's going to cause the color of the water to change. That's machmas davar acher. Something fell into the water and changed its appearance. Or some other types of dye, or some other types of spices, but something fell into the water and caused the color of the water to change. Now says the Mishnah Berurah, even if we have a situation where something fell into the water, but it did not dissolve into the water. Something fell into the water, and it's still there as a davar gush. It's still there as a separate entity, separate from the water. But due to the fact that this substance is soaking in the water, the appearance of the water is now changed. So you could have, for some reason, what's coming to my mind is you take a teaspoon of paprika and you put it into water, but you don't dissolve it in the water. Doesn't matter. The paprika suspended in the water can change the appearance of the water. So how do we look at that? Do we look at that the mara of the water has really changed? Is that called that the mara of the water has changed? Or is that kind of like you're looking at the water through a colored filter? So, in other words, if let's say you add a liquid dye, or you add ink to water, that's dissolved in the water. You cannot separate it. It's not suspended in the water. It's dissolved in the water. In that case, it changed the appearance of the water. The water is changed. In the case where you put something in the water and that substance is suspended in the water didn't really change. You're looking at the water through the suspended particles. So does that constitute a change? Is that called machmas davar shenafal boy? And is that puzzle? Says the Mishnah Berurah, yes. Even if the substance of the dye did not dissolve into the water, is just since it's suspended in the water, the appearance of the water is now different. That also is a change, and it would puzzle the water. Same if the appearance of the water changes due to smoke. The only time when a change in appearance does not puzzle the water for the netillas yadayim is if it's mamish al yadei atzmon. Nothing fell in, nothing joined the water. The water completely on its own changed its appearance. In that case, it's okay. But anything else that changes the appearance of the water puzzles it for the netillas yadayim. Ochein, however, masha nishtana al yadei ofar v'tit. Let's say the appearance of the water changes because of dirt or mud. Shenis arev b'soichai. Let's say you have sediment mixed into the water. So the water is cloudy. The water is cloudy because of sediment that's mixed into it. Now, based on what we just said, you would think that, okay, so what? So there's sediment, and the sediment is suspended in the water. It's not dissolved in the water. Okay, but we just said, let's say you put paprika in the water, and the paprika is suspended in the water, but it makes the water reddish. That means that it's nishtana mareyan, and now it's puzzle for the netillas yadayim, even though the paprika didn't dissolve into the water. So you would think, off the top of your head, that by sediment, it's the same thing. If you have sediment that's suspended in the water, but now due to the sediments suspended in the water is cloudy, so it's nishtana mareyan, you would think it should be puzzle. Says the Mishnah Berurah, no. If it's cloudy, let's say, because of dirt and mud, that's mixed in with the water, that is not considered a problematic shinoi mara. Like we're going to see later on in Siftes. Why? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Mishum de derech gidol amayim hu kain lihiyos me'urev ba'afar v'tit. Because go to the lake, go to the river. The water in the lake, the water in the river, the water in the stream, very oftentimes it has sediment mixed into it. And that's the very source of the water. So part and parcel of water is that water often has sediment mixed into it, which is going to change its mara somewhat. but that does not constitute a change in the appearance of the water. That's the natural appearance of water, to have sediment mixed into it. The Gaman furthermore says the Mishnah Berurah is another reason, because when it comes to suspended sediments, if you would let the water sit, it becomes clear, because the sediments settle to the bottom and the water becomes clear. So therefore, that does not constitute a shinui mara. Then the Mechaber spoke about a third reason why the water might change its appearance, and that was makmas mikoimon, because of its place. What does that mean? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Bein shenishtanu kishahayu oimdin bakarka, this halacha, that the water becomes possible in netillas yadayim if the mara changes makmas mikoimon. That's true if the appearance of the water changes while it's in a depression in the ground. Ubein akakach, or maybe after you draw the water off the ground, kisheshavan bekli, when you put it into a keli, v'nishtanu al yedei kli, and the water changes because of the keli. Why would the color of the water change because of a keli? Depends what kind of keli you have. If you have a type of keli that's a colored keli, and the dyes or the pigments or what have you that are coloring the keli bleed into the water, so then the water is changing because of the color that's bleeding off of the keli. So that's a shinoi mare that's coming about because of an exterior force. The coloration of the keli is causing a change in the coloration of the water. We're not talking about you have clear water and you put it into a green glass, and now you look at it, oh, look, the water looks green. No, if you pour it out in a keli, it's not green. What we're talking about is a keli where the coloration of the keli somehow bleeds into the water and changes the coloration of the water. That's no different than if you have water that dye falls into. So in that case, the dye fell into the water. In our case, the dye bled out of the keli and went into the water. Either way, the water is changing its appearance because of something that is coming into the water, and that is a significant change in appearance, and it would passel the water for netillas yadayim. Now, the Mishnah Berurah says something which is a little bit deceptively complex. We're doing kind of like a dive into Hilchas Mikvos over here, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do a deep dive into Hilchas Mikvos to explain all of the concepts here, but let's take a look at it on a high level. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'dan, you should know. This that we're saying, that for netillas yadayim purposes, the water becomes puzzle with a shinoi mare koldehu, with a very minor change. Even a minor change in the appearance of the water is going to puzzle it for netillas yadayim. So, for example, you put a teaspoon of paprika in the water, and now the water looks reddish. Even though the paprika is not dissolved in the water, it's just suspended in the water. There's just a little bit of a reddish tinge in the water by virtue of the fact that there's a little bit of paprika suspended in the water. That's enough to puzzle the water for netillas yadayim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Hu dafka kishenoitel bekli al yadav. That's only in the context of netillas yadayim, when you're pouring water over your hands from a keli. Aval betoivel yadav bar bomsa. But if you're doing tvilas yadayim, so you're dunking your hands into a body of water of arbomsa, your mamish doing tvilas yadayim, einoi poisel mak mashidei marakoldu. Then you don't have this problem. If you want to dunk your hands into a mikveh, into a puddle, a ditch of standing rainwater, and there's mamish arba'im sa of rainwater in that ditch, then we don't care if there's a little bit of a change of appearance in that water. Ukemai b'tzilas haguf, because that gets the same halacha as the halacha of a mikveh that you use to tovel your whole body. It's not easy to passel a mikveh because of a change of appearance, of color, of looks of the water. You can. It sounds like over here that there's no psul of shinoi mara. There is a psul of shinoi mara by a mikveh, but the bar, the standard that you have to reach in order to have a psul of shita mara in a mikveh is a very high standard. It's not going to be a teaspoon of paprika. That's not going to passel a mikveh. Elim keinafal b'soicha guf hatzeva. In order to have a psul of shita mara in a mikveh, you need that dye should fall in v'nimuach b'soichai, and it mamish becomes dissolved into the water of the mikveh and really colors it. Ay mashke, or a colored beverage fell in, kigayin yayin yadayim, like red wine, v'kiyotze by sharmei peros, or pomegranate juice, falls into the mikveh and mamish changes the color of the water. Then you can have a psul of shita mara, but that's a serious shita mara. The Chamavura b'Yardei Siman Reish Aleph Chafei and Chavav in Hilchos Mikvos. So the bar for having a problem with shita mara is much, much, much higher by tfilas yadayim than it is by netillas yadayim. For netillas yadayim, you need clear water. If the water is not clear, you have a problem using it for netillas yadayim. And when you're talking about tfilas yadayim, let's say in a mayon, in a stream, in a river or a lake, over there's no psul of shita mara whatsoever. Ice cut and hay, in all of these cases the water is psulin, says the Mishnah Berurah, but if the water changes back to its natural state, kisherim, it once again becomes kosher. Netillas yadayim, he brings this down from the Magen Avram, u'sha'arei achreidim. Now we go to Sif Beis. Says the Mechaber, Asa b'mayim melacha. If you used water for some kind of work, you used the water to accomplish something. Oy sheshara behem pitay, or maybe you dunked an Oreo cookie into the water, or you dunked a piece of bread into the water. Afilu niskavin lishrois beklizeh. Even if you were holding a dry piece of bread and you wanted to stick it into glass number 1, and inadvertently, accidentally, the nafal lisheni, the bread fell into glass number 2, psulim, the water in glass number 2 is going to become pasul for netillas yadayim. So a new concept. The concept that we have over here in Sif Beis is, if you do any kind of avodah, if you do any kind of work with the water that you want to use for the netillas yadayim, it becomes pasul for the netillas yadayim. And we're going to see that the reason is because once you do some kind of malacha with the water is now considered mei shayfchen. It's not considered wastewater. I wanted water to soak my bread. I soaked my bread. I did malacha with the water. Now I finished doing my malacha with the water. Now I throw the water out. Now the water is wastewater. It's mei shayfchen. You can't wash the netillas yadayim with wastewater. So if you do any kind of malacha with the water, it passes the water for the netillas yadayim. Therefore, says the Mechaber weiter, v'im tzinen yayin b'mayim. Let's say you used water to cool off wine. You had a bottle of wine, and it's warm, and you want to cool it down. So what you do is, you take a bucket of cold water, you take the bottle of wine, and you stick the bottle of wine into the bucket of cold water. So you're using that cold water, you're using it to accomplish a malacha of cooling down the wine. Okay, you can no longer use that water for the netillas yadayim, because you used it for a malacha, now it's mei shayfchen, you can no longer use it. Says the Mechaber weiter, v'em hidiach bahem kelim. If you used the water to wash kelim, you have water that you use to wash dishes, psulim, that water is now pasul to use for the netillas yadayim. V'em hayu kelim mudachim, but if these kelim were really clean kelim, and you just somehow gave it a rinse, oy chadashim, or they were brand new kelim, and you just wanted to rinse it off for some reason, ksherim, then the water remains kosher for the netillas yadayim. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah over here. It says the Mishnah Berurah cut and vav. Malacha. If you used the water for any kind of malacha, it becomes pasul with the netillas yadayim. Why? Explains the Mishnah Berurah. Because when somebody uses water to accomplish a need of his, he needs water to do something with. He needs water to wash off a keli. We're going to see he needs water to wash off an apple. He needs water to cool down a bottle of wine. You're using the water for a tzorich. You're using the water to accomplish a purpose, to accomplish a need, to fulfill a need that you have. After that, nasu kishoifchen, now it becomes wastewater. Ha'imdim l'shvicha, that's ready to be poured out and thrown out. Upsulim l'netila, and now it's possible for the netillas yadayim. Eis cotton zayin, sheshara behem. One of the examples that the Mechaber gave was, you soaked a piece of bread in the water. If you soak a piece of bread in the water, so you fulfilled a need of yours, it's now wastewater. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, T'chashav zeh malacha. That constitutes a malacha, v'nasu ha'mayim shoivchen. And now the mayim is mayim shoivchen. Va'afilu im shara behen acher she'ener balamayim. It's an interesting halacha. Let's say you filled up a cup of water to use for the netillas yadayim. It's your water. You filled it up. You went to the lake with your keli. You filled up a cup of water, and you have your water prepared for the netillas yadayim. And now the guy next to you says, oh, look at that. You have some nice, good, cold water. I have a dry piece of bread. Dunk. He dunks his bread into your water. Says the Mishnah Berurah, even if somebody else, it's not his water, he could still ruin your water. He could passel your water. Now, it's interesting. There are those that ask a kasha on this. They say, what? Somebody else could aser your thing? We usually don't find that. We usually find that only the owner of a thing can aser it. For example, let's say I have a keli. I have something, and now somebody else goes in and takes it and uses it for avodah zarah purposes. He can't aser my item. He can't aser my item. It's very nice that he used it for avodah zarah, but it's my chayfetz. He can't aser my chayfetz. So how is it over here that somebody else can aser your water? The answer is very, very, very simple. It's very simple. Let's say I have a rib steak. I have a beautiful Prime Plus rib steak that I just took off the grill. And now somebody else takes a bottle of milk and pours milk on it when it's hot, when it's crazy hot, straight off the grill. It just came off an 800-degree grill, and somebody pours water on it. Guess what? He just passeled my steak. He asered my steak. He made it basar mechalov. What do you mean? It's my steak. How could he turn it into basar mechalov? Because it's a physical fact. He poured milk on it. He made it basar mechalov. I don't care if he did it or you did it. He asered your meat, right? So the same thing over here. It's a physical fact. If somebody used your water to do a malacha, it's now mayim shoivchen. I don't care if he's not the owner. It doesn't matter. He turned it into mayim shoivchen. And continues the Mishnah Berurah, he says, V'chein b'shari malachos. So too with any other kind of malacha that was done with the water. Ein chilik bein hu atzmai la'acherim. There's no different if the owner of the water does the malacha or somebody else does. Bottom line is, he's making it meishoivchen. Achein b'chedusha Rabbi Akiva Eiger mistapik b'chal zed. There's a Rabbi Akiva Eiger that goes into this. Then the Mechaber said, even if you had a piece of bread, you meant to dunk it into glass number one. But as you were passing, you were passing over glass number two to get to glass number one, and you accidentally dropped the bread into glass number two. So you didn't intend on using the water in glass number two. You wanted to use the water in glass number one to soak your bread. You just accidentally dropped it into glass number two. It still passels the water in glass number two. Says the Mishnah Berurah, I feel in this gavin. Kevin dal kol panim this gavin lishreis pita b'mayim. Because the bottom line is, you did want to soak your bread in water. And by virtue of the fact that you inadvertently dropped it into glass number two, guess what? You soaked your bread in water. So you performed the malacha with glass number two. You didn't want to. You wanted to perform the malacha with the water in glass number one. But guess what? You did perform the malacha with the water in glass number two. So now the water in glass number two is possible for the netillas yadayim. But if you never wanted to soak your bread in water, and you just accidentally dropped your bread, and it fell into the water on its own. Maybe it just fell off the shelf into the water. Then ksherim. Then the water remains kosher for the netillas yadayim. Why? Lamaisa, it soaked the bread. I never wanted to soak bread. I had no intention to soak bread. So then you can't say that a malacha was done with the water. A malacha is a dvar tzairich. When you have something that you need done, and you accomplish it with the water, that's doing a malacha. Even if somebody else does it, he had kavanah to soak his bread in the water. So malacha was done with the water. But if there was no tzairich, If nobody wanted to soak bread and just a piece of bread fell in, that's not called doing a malacha with the water. That doesn't make it wastewater. So too, if a dirty dish fell into the water, and by virtue of the fact that it fell into the water, it got clean. But I didn't go to wash dishes. I wasn't interested in washing dishes. I wasn't trying to wash dishes. So I didn't do a malacha with the water. A keli fell in, it became clean. But that's memela. It's not that somebody did a malacha. That doesn't make it mei shayvchen. And therefore, that water would still be kosher for the netillas yadayim, albeit the water has to be clean. If the water is fouled and the water is now dirty, we're going to see, then you have a problem. But if the water is still clean, you can use it for the netillas yadayim. Im nafa beged l'saycha mayim. Let's say an article of clothing fell into water. Vaytziyah misham, and you pulled it out. And it happens to be that a stain came out. Lo nifsalu hamayim kevin shalai niskaven. Again, you didn't do a malacha with the water. Ukamai b'pas. Aval hamayim shemitza mea beged psulim. But if you would wring water out of the beged, that water you cannot use for the netillas yadayim. If you used the water to cool off a warm bottle of wine, that's also a problem. The chashuv malacha, that constitutes a malacha. Because through the medium of the cold water, you removed the heat from the bottle of wine. So you performed a dvar tzorich with the water. You used the water to accomplish a task. So now the water is mei shayvchen and it's no longer usable. The same thing, let's say the wine was cold. This is a little different case. Let's say you didn't have warm wine. In the first case, you had warm wine that you wanted to cool off. So you took the warm wine and you put it into cold water to cool it off. That renders the water puzzle, because you used the water to accomplish your task of cooling the wine down. But says the Mishnah Berurah like this. Let's say the wine was already cold. So I don't need the water to cool off the wine. So why am I putting the wine in the water? You have a nice cold bottle of wine. You brought it with you to the park for a picnic. It's nice and cold, but it's 95 degrees outside. So you're afraid that the wine is going to get hot. So you take the bottle of wine and you stick it in the cold water, not to cool the wine down, but to maintain the cool temperature of the mayim. In that case, says the Mishnah Berurah, then it doesn't become puzzle. If the water is cold, then if the wine is cold, and you put it into the cool water just so that it should not become hot, then the water remains kosher for the netillas yadayim. Why? Because you're not using the water to accomplish a task. You're not using the water to cool down the wine. You're using the water to maintain the temperature that the wine is already at. That's not considered doing a malacha. That's the sheet of the Mishnah Berurah. Or let's say you put fish into water to keep the fish alive. That also, you're using the water to maintain something in the condition that it's in. The fish are alive. You want to keep them alive. You put it in the water to keep it alive. So you're maintaining a condition that already exists. That's not called doing a malacha with the mayim, and then the mayim doesn't become puzzle. Deina mayim poyalim behem, because the water is not affecting a change. The water is not doing something. Rak sheshoimrim oisan. It's only maintaining the thing the way it is. And even if the fish dies in the water, the water doesn't become puzzle, albeit if the water becomes smelly, it does become puzzle. If you use water to wash kelim, says the Mishnah Berurah, what does this mean? That you used water to wash a keli? Midavar hadavok bahen. You had a keli that dirt became stuck to, and you used the water to wash off the keli. Or the keli had a bad odor, and you're using the water to wash the keli to get away the odor. Now, what this Mishnah Berurah seems to be saying, and he's bringing this, if you take a look at Ois Cotton Tez Zion, he's bringing this from the Rambam. Now, do I have a Rambam here? I do. You know what? Let's see if I could quickly look up this Rambam. I wanted to look it up earlier and I didn't. Because you see, the question that I have over here is, Rambam yadayim. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's in the Mishnayos. It's Pirush Mishnayos La Rambam Masechtas Yadayim, which I don't have here in the room. This Mishnah Berurah is a very kind of enigmatic Mishnah Berurah. The Mechaber said, if you use water to wash a keli, then that's called doing a malacha with the mayim becomes puzzle. Says the Mishnah Berurah, what does it mean that you're washing the keli? Midavar adavuk behen. If you have something stuck on the keli, and you wash the keli with the water, or you're using it to wash away an odor. In both of those cases, you're affecting a significant change with the water. You have a dish that has something stuck to it. You're washing off something stuck to the dish. You have a keli that's permeated with a foul odor. You're washing away the odor. You're using the water to affect a significant change. But what if there isn't anything stuck to it? What if you just like rinsing off some loose stuff? Is that considered malacha that you passel the water? I think we're going to have to see as we go. Let's see. Ois Cotton Yud Aleph. The Mechaber says you use the water to wash kalim. Says the Mishnah Berurah here, Ois Cotton Yud Aleph. V'hu adinim b'diach behen yerakos. Doesn't have to be that you wash the keli. Let's say you use the water to wash your vegetables. Or mashma l'chayra. And the implication over here seems to be that if the kalim or the vegetables were already washed off and they're already clean, then ksherim amayim, then the water is kosher, right? I mean, that's what the Mechaber says. The Mechaber says the last several words on Nun Beis and Beis, v'imhayu kalim mudachim, if the kalim are already washed, or chadashim, or they're new, kisherim, then even if you use the water to wash off the kalim, the water remains kosher. So says the Mechaber, because then you didn't do anything significant. It's not a malacha. So the Mishnah Berurah is saying that the same way there's a problem if you wash off kalim, there's a problem if you wash off vegetables. But the same way the Mechaber says that the problem by kalim is only if you're doing a significant malacha. So if the kalim are brand new and they're clean, so then you didn't do a malacha with the water and the water remains kosher, the same thing would apply to vegetables. If the vegetables are squeaky clean and you wash off clean vegetables with the water, you didn't do a significant malacha with the water remains kosher for the netillas yadayim. He brings this down from the Magen Avram. Nevertheless, says the Chavetz Chaim, Im shara behen hayerakos shelo yichmishu. Let's say you put vegetables in water to soak so that they shouldn't dry up and shrivel. Das Magen Avram, it's the opinion of the Magen Avram, va'odeis achrayim, and some other achrayim, the mikri malacha upsulin, that is called a malacha, and that would passel the water. And that's interesting, because at first glance you would think that that's like putting a cold bottle of wine in cold water to maintain the temperature, which the Mishnah Berurah said, that's not doing a malacha. You're not changing the wine, you're maintaining the wine in the condition that it's in. Well, so too over here by the vegetables. If I take nice fresh vegetables and I soak them in water so that they shouldn't dry out and shrivel, I'm using the water to maintain the vegetables the way they are. So why does that passel the water? So he brings down a very machlokes. So there are some say, he brings down the Magen Avram and other achrayim, that is called a malacha and it passels the water. But v'yesh b'kilin b'di'evet, there are those that are mekel imhem lachim unukiyim me'afruris. If you're dealing with vegetables that are nice and fresh and moist and they're clean from any dust, and you put them in the water to soak to maintain their freshness. So there are those that say that that's okay because you're just maintaining it in its fresh state. So why would the Magen Avram say that that's a problem? So the Sharetzion brings down, because it could be that when you put vegetables in water to soak, it's not that the vegetables are just maintaining the vegetables the way they are. The water isn't just maintaining the current condition of the vegetable. The water, the moisture of the water goes into the vegetable and affects a constant change in the vegetable to keep the vegetable fresh. It's making the vegetable fresh. It's not just maintaining the freshness of the vegetable. So there we have a machlokes. Ois cotton yud beis. The Mechaber said if you wash kalim, then psulim, then the water becomes puzzle. V'huadin shar malacha, so you do any other kind of malacha with water. Kigoin shenasad ben kalim shenispaku b'maisachama. Maybe you have kalim that swelled up in the heat, kedei sheyiskavtzu, and you put it into cold water so that the kalim should contract. Oy shemodad behen midos, or you use water as a counterweight, to weigh against a weight, to measure the weight of something. So you're not even doing anything with the water. You take water and you're using it as a counterweight. That's called doing a malacha with water. And now the water becomes puzzle. Or you have water in a gradiated keli. I think I'm using a real word. A gradiated keli. What I mean is, you have a keli that has measuring marks on it. And you use this so that you take something and you put it into the keli and you measure how much water it displaces. And that could tell you the volume of the item. I think this is Archimedes' principle. So you have a keli full of water, and you're using the water as a measuring tool. That's called doing malacha with the water. The water is in a keli that has marks, b'shvil mishkal. It has engravings, l'samein, as a siman, l'litra, v'l'shnei l'trois, to measure volume. When you put in something into the water, it displaces the water, and you see which mark the water level goes up to. And you weigh something or measure something in this contraption. That's called doing a malacha with the water, and the water will become possible for the netillas yadayim. If you add some kind of aromatics to a water, Kasav b'shlal lesar, the shlal writes that asers, it puzzles the water for the netillas yadayim. Aval ha'achrayim iskimu dein b'yisr klal, but the achrayim agree, they reach a consensus that this would not puzzle the water at all. They don't eat some malacha b'mayim, because you're not doing any kind of malacha with the water. All you're doing is you're adding in aromatics to give it a pleasant scent in order to improve the water. Okay, we're going to stop over here. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The source of limud HaTorah should be begging against Klal Yisrael. The Ran should say Yeshua's the first part also Shidduchim to all those in need. The learning today should stand as a schos for Refuah Shalema for Meir ben Chayes Sarah, who is in need of Rachem and Shemayim. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Be well.